Today, we are going to walk the exact same path that the militiamen took on April 19th, 1775, when they made the fateful decision to cross the North Bridge or die trying. The militia companies who responded here on April 19th didn't just materialize suddenly here at the bridge. And they weren't already here awaiting the British. They marched here, step by step, two by two, double file, down that very road. Hi everybody, it's me, Katie. Welcome back to my channel where it is all Revolutionary War all the time. And if you've been here before, then you know we are off on another historical action adventure. On this channel, we visit burying grounds, battlefields, bridges, and places in between where events of the American Revolution happened. And if you haven't been here before, then welcome. I am a Revolutionary War researcher, writer, and speaker based in the Boston area, and this channel is intended to be a fun and friendly place where I share my research. Join me today as we follow in the footsteps of the militiamen of April 19th, 1775, and walk the exact same road that they did, which still leads to the Old North Bridge in Concord. But if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, well, it's too late. You're coming with us. On the morning of April 19th, American militiamen gathered in this very field, the muster field, and made a decision that resulted in American troops being ordered to fire upon the British for the first time in American history, and resulted in the death of the first American officer to die in the American Revolution. And it all began with some smoke. The Americans standing in this field thought that the British were setting fire to the town of Concord and burning it to the ground. And for more on that, my previous video talked all about what the Americans observed from this high ground and why they thought the British were burning the town. So I'll link that video in the description box below and at the end of this video. But for now, the Reader's Digest version of the story is that the Americans thought that Concord had been set fire to by the British troops. And the Americans decided that they weren't just going to stand by on some hillside and let it happen. They decided to go to the town of Concord to defend it and to cross the North Bridge to get there or die trying, which some of them did. Now, this road that we are walking on is awesome. When you are here at MinuteMan National Park, the Old North Bridge, you are not just shuffling down the gravel path from the visitor center to the bridge. No, you are walking the exact same path that the Minutemen took on April 19th, 1775, which led them to the fateful encounter at North Bridge. The about 400 militia and Minutemen who had gathered here in the muster field began to form a long column by company, two by two, double file, and they prepare to move toward the road which will take them to the North Bridge. The Acton Minute Company of Captain Isaac Davis is in the front of the column. Also up front with him is Major John Buttrick of Concord, whose house still stands today. Also up front with Major Buttrick is Lieutenant Colonel John Robinson of Westford. The senior commanding officer here at the North Bridge in Concord on April 19th is Colonel James Barrett, and it's thought that he was at the rear of the column on horseback. As the militia prepared to move towards the road, Colonel Barrett gave orders. March to the bridge and cross it. But do not fire upon the king's troops unless they fire first, which they did. So MinuteMan National Park did some amazing research on this road. This road is over 300 years old, and Minuteman recovered it as part of some archaeological work that was undertaken in the 20th century after this road fell out of use in the 1790s. And so Minuteman was able to replace and rebuild this road, which adds a whole new dimension to being here at the park, so that when you walk this route, you can see the same sight that the Minutemen did on April 19th, 1775. Except when they were here, that bridge was being guarded by 100 British troops. So as the Americans are walking toward this bridge, the two forces have been in full view of each other this whole time. The British, with rising tension, watched the militia approach. And ever since 11 p.m. on the night before, the night of April 18th, when the British set out from Boston, seizing the North Bridge was a primary objective of the British expedition. In fact, when Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, who was the British commander of the expedition, set out from Boston, he sent out a vanguard of light infantry troops ahead of the main column in order to seize the bridges of Concord. The British had orders to hold this bridge. The Americans had orders to cross it. The confrontation was inevitable. Now, as far as the 100 redcoats guarding this bridge, one company of troops was stationed here on the west side of the bridge, about where the Minuteman statue stands today. Two more companies were spread out further from the bridge on the west side, all along the small hills and ridges in the immediate vicinity. Their objective was to guard the bridge and the roadways that came through here and secure this whole area. The British were well aware that since they had entered Concord at about 7 a.m. that morning, that large numbers of militiamen were congregating on all of the high ground and hills in this immediate vicinity, watching their every move. The British had to hold this bridge, but they didn't. And so the British, who were stationed out here to the west of the bridge on these small hills and ridges, see the American militia in the muster field forming and starting to make their way down to the road. And so the British that are stationed out here start to feel really nervous, and they want to fall back and rejoin the company of British troops who were stationed at the bridge. And the American militiamen, by the way, who were marching down this very road in a column headed to the North Bridge, they all knew what had happened at Lexington that morning. When the British passed through, about 17 members of Captain Parker's Lexington Company were shot. And yet they marched on to the bridge, quickly, orderly, inexorably, with orders not to fire unless they were fired upon first, which they were. The British at the bridge are scrambling, and they start trying to pull up the planks of the bridge in order to stop the militia's advance. Major John Buttrick at the front of the column yells to them, "Quit pulling up those planks!" So in the face of the militia's advance, the British start to fall back across the bridge, and they are scrambling Officers are struggling to give orders. British soldiers are struggling to understand orders, and there is confusion as they try to form in some cohesive way. But they are out of time. The Americans halt here on the west side of the bridge, about where this Minuteman statue stands today. The British are here on the east side of the bridge, about where the battle monument stands today. The only thing separating the two forces is the North Bridge and the Concord River. Suddenly, shots ring out. A few British soldiers have fired, but the balls just drop into the Concord River. But then they fire a volley. 2 Americans are shot and killed where they stand. Private Abner Hosmer, 21 years old, of Captain Isaac Davis's Acton Minute Company, is shot in the head and killed instantly. And Captain Isaac Davis himself, up at the front, is shot in the chest, and he falls. He is the first American officer to die in the American Revolution, here at the North Bridge. And then Major John Buttrick, who had just yelled at the British troops to stop pulling up those planks, yells again. But this time, it is the order to fire. He yells, "Fire, for God's sakes, fire!" This marks the first time in history that Americans are ordered to fire upon British troops, and the militia does fire. 2 British soldiers are shot and killed on this side of the bridge. One shot grazes the chest of British Lieutenant William Sutherland, who's standing right over there, and it spins him around and knocks him off his feet, but he does survive. 4 of the British officers who are here at North Bridge on April 19th are shot. Each side fires for a few short moments, but the militia succeed in driving the British away from the bridge almost immediately. The British start to retreat down the road back to Concord in order to rejoin the main body of troops in town. One of the British at the bridge, Ensign Jeremy Lister, summed up what happened by saying, "The weight of their fire was such that we were obliged to give way and then run with the greatest precipitance." So crossing over from the American side of the bridge, some of the militiamen are in hot pursuit of the retreating British. And one of the militiamen who pursued the British was a Concord Minuteman named Amos Barrett. And years later, he remembered as they came over the bridge that he saw 8 to 10 wounded British troops, a running and a hobbling, and looking back over their shoulder to see if the militia was after them. Many of the militiamen who crossed the bridge take some high ground here on the east side. Other militiamen stay on the west side of the bridge, where the bodies of Captain Davis and Private Hosmer are collected and brought home. The British retreat back to Boston, which will turn into the iconic running battle of April 19th, is set to begin. Captain Isaac Davis had a date with destiny, which he kept on April 19th, 1775, when he became the first American officer to die in the American Revolution, when a British musket ball pierced his heart. But Captain Davis had other matters weighing on his heart that April morning. We'll talk about what those were in an upcoming video. Let me know if you liked this video by hitting the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I hope you'll consider doing so you can join us on our next historical action adventure. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.